us getting to know you, to getting to know you and you getting to know us,
Yes.
and making sure that we are very clear about this process. First and foremost, uh, talk to us about this role, the city administrator. What has been shared with you, and most importantly, what do you understand your role to be?
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate the question. And I'll say that I appreciate you really starting the conversation off by describing me as a public servant. Because I think sometimes we forget that. And I'm truly here, as a professional. And yes, we're going to talk a bit about, my background, truly here to serve. And that is to serve and make sure that we are implementing the mayor's vision, and that we are a government prepared to serve a city that is on the move. And so the mayor has a very bold vision and aggressive goals to transform our city. And it requires a government that is talented, and that has the support it needs through our workforce to actually perform at the level and standards that the city requires. So that said, as a profession, as a city administrator, I'll say that um, the profession is excited. When the mayor a year ago made the decision to make this a frontline campaign commitment,
Mhm.
a mentor of mine, the executive director of the International City County Managers Association and the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, we all took note. And I will tell you that city administrators and city managers around the country were paying close attention because, like you said, it is at this point it is a matter of making sure that our city is competitive, that we are on par with and prepared to bring residents back and to compete with cities, not just sort of in the country, but even international cities for branding, for attention, for residents. And the only way we do that is by treating our residents like we value them. I'll leave it there. Oh, yeah. Let me also say, just in terms of the role itself, when you think of a corporate organization or any sort of any private sector company, you think of a CEO, a chief executive. Our city's chief executive is the mayor. He establishes the vision, he establishes the pace, and the COO, in our case, the city administrator, is the person that's responsible for the day-to-day operations. And so it's probably the simplest way for me to explain what a city administrator is and does.
Mm.
It's the person that is responsible for engaging our workforce and making sure that we are managing day-to-day operations of the city. Now, in our form of government, where we have a strong mayor who is the executive, unlike where I came from and spent 2 years, Austin, Texas, um, uh, in Austin, there's a city manager and a city council. The city council establishes the vision, and the city manager is responsible, if you will, for executing that vision. In our form of government, where we have a strong mayor, I am responsible to the mayor in making sure that the city's day-to-day operations are managed.
So that includes, sir, having a relationship and are you managing or overseeing agencies like all of the city agencies?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and probably should have included that in my original answer. So the way that your government is structured here in Baltimore, under the mayor's leadership, is that there is a city administrator and a chief of staff. So our chief of staff is responsible for engaging federal partners, state partners, engaging our city council, responsible for communications and all of the external work that needs to be done to make sure that we're advocating properly for the resources that we need and engaging properly with our stakeholders. On the other side, with the city administrator, there's a deputy city administrator, a deputy mayor for public safety, a deputy mayor for community and economic development, who we just announced today,
Right.
and the deputy mayor for equity, health, and human services. And those executives I support directly, and they are overseeing and supporting individual agencies. And so one would certainly be able to talk more about which agencies report to which deputy mayors, but that's the structure of government.
Okay, so
Yeah,
so because I know we are familiar with the deputy mayor structure. We've had that structure around for some time here in Baltimore. But you will serve as the go-to person between the deputy mayors and the mayor, or you the go-to person between the city agencies and the deputy mayors?
Yeah, I like to say that that it's going to be a much more flat, because of the mayor we have. It's going to be a
Yes,
much
sir.
more flat organizational structure. So
Okay.
our mayor will be engaging our deputy mayors and agency directors and commissioners very directly.
Okay.
That said, the power in having a city administrator is that information flow. How often do you talk to residents and they say, this agency said this, but this other agency said that, and there's no continuity in how we manage? And so the power in having a city administrator is that we begin to standardize customer service, standardize systems and software that we use to engage residents and get business done. And so these agencies, as information flows up and across our enterprise, across our government structure, that we're able to do that in a much more systematic way. And so, yes, I am reporting into the mayor sort of system issues about our government, day-to-day issues about our government. One person, it would be very difficult to deal with and manage every single agency that reports into our government. So I will say that, yes, I am the city administrator, but I have a fantastic team that I'm working with. And I like to say that I'm a partner in the process and not necessarily the kind of one man show, if you will, that will.
Right. So you provide additional data, additional information, your extra set of eyes on what's going on the daily happenings of our city government for the mayor.
Yeah, and I will say strategic eyes, in the sense that they're going to be, not going to be, there are considerable issues, real strategic issues that our government is dealing with, and being able to not just see those issues, but actually leverage the talent and leadership that we already have here, and bring leaders who are, and stakeholders together to be able to solve those problems is certainly something that I'm considering my priority in this role.
Fantastic, fantastic. Folks, if you're just tuning into For the Culture here on WEAA, I'm talking to the new Baltimore City Administrator, Mr. Chris Shorter, who's given us some insight about his role as the City Administrator. So do you mind if I call you Chris, or should I call you Mr. Shorter? Because I know sometimes.
No, Chris is good. Chris is good.
Chris, let's talk a little bit about what you have seen so far. I mean, you're coming in from a new city. And you know, in Baltimore, it's a very, very serious culture on how we do things. But
Yep.
Based on what you have seen so far, what grade would you give our government based on administration, based on customer service, just overall effectiveness? Where are we on the scale?
Yeah, you know, I don't know that that'll be fair. You know, and the reason I'm saying that is because while I have met some amazing public administrators and, as you said, public servants, so far I haven't met everyone, and I'm still meeting and introducing myself to our workforce and to our city. So I think it would be a mistake for me to sort of be giving our city a grade at being so new here. Now, I think the mayor, who grew up here, has a history. He can absolutely give a grade. But,
Right.
For me, as a newcomer and someone who is really identifying where we have real jewels in terms of our leaders and our employees, and where we have opportunities for growth, I'm still in that, you know, sort of assessment process. I'll say that in terms of priority, though, there's some very basic things that we need to look at and make sure that we're getting right. And that is everything from as basic as making sure that we're answering the telephone, that we are answering the telephone with a friendly disposition, and that we get things resolved. My mantra in government and in public service, especially local government, is to treat everyone you meet in this government setting with a professional tone, and with really an eye towards yes and how we can get there. So we have work to do there to make sure that we are not just um, uh, directing our employees to be customer service focused, but giving them the tools that they need to actually do it. I'll say that we're about to forge down the path of procurement reform. I will also say, just in terms of grades, I haven't ever seen in the cities that I've worked in um, the kind of movement around transition that I've seen here in Baltimore. So well over 250 Baltimore residents and friends and stakeholders participated in the transition process for our mayor. And so a transition report was released with a very comprehensive perspective on what residents believe this administration should be focused on. And so a considerable work is being done right now to make sure that we digest that transition report, and that the recommendations that were developed, that we're taking seriously and really working towards, making sure that we have a strategic plan for our first term, and that we really and truly bring this city forward in a way that the mayor has articulated many, many times on this program and on others.
So it sounds like customer service, procurement reform. Any other top priorities that we should be aware of, sir?
Yeah, I think in terms of any administrator that you talk to this early in the term, another focus is getting the right folks on the bus. So we have some strategic vacancies in the leadership roles and hires that need to be made. And I am focused with the mayor on making sure that we get the right leaders that are seasoned in those roles, and that we are assessing our current workforce and making sure that they have, again, the support, and where there's a need for some additional attention, that we're giving that. So I would say human capital is a big focus here early in the administration.
And that's one of the things, Chris, that that I know has been a major challenge for our government in the city. That we know that Baltimore has produced some of the most brilliant leaders in public service, and tapping into that brilliance to ensure that our government understands the people, the cultures of the various communities that make up Baltimore City, and most importantly, understand the language to be able to communicate to people, to understand, so that way they can know for sure that they have someone, that the city knows that they have someone that's from them. Now, I think over the years, we're still grappling with having folks coming out from outside the city to work in our government. And we of course we have our commissioner, Commissioner Harrison for the Baltimore City Police Department, coming from outside and coming in. He's been here for 2 years. You got yourself. I mean, we can go down the list. But the big thing I always tell people is, if you come here to serve, then you're off on the right start.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I would say Baltimore is right to be suspicious about folks coming in, and it is my responsibility as as a senior official appointed in the city to be as available as possible to residents, to employees, and to be ready to talk about what the job is, talk about my background. And I'll say I'm fortunate in that I've been able to do that quite a bit, and plan to continue to do that, and explain as much as I need to and repeat as much as I need to, who I am, what my professional credentials are, what cities I've been fortunate enough to help and play some role in, and what we're doing here. So I don't mind the community meetings. I don't mind the one-off conversations. I think it's a part of the job, and coming to a new place, I will say you have to expect that
Yeah.
it'll be needed. And so I don't fault Baltimore at all for wanting, for wanting me to explain this job and explain, who I am.
Chris, and we got a couple of moments left, but I want to try to get two questions in. The first question is, there has been a huge disparity of service in Baltimore City. When we talk about some communities getting the resources and an attention versus other communities, unfortunately, it has been along racial lines. You have some of your more upscale, much more wealthier communities from Roland Park to Fells Point to Canton and some of those other areas that have gotten the services that they requested, whether it's 311 service, trash pickup, or any other service from, constituent services from the city west. You have some communities in both Black communities in East Baltimore and West Baltimore that have not gotten the service, have been quote unquote the forgotten of this city. Is there a plan or a strategy to address this disparity that Dr. Lawrence Johnson talks about in Morgan State, professor, talking about the white L and the black butterfly? How is there a plan that you and your team and the mayor have figured out on how to make the quality of service more equitable in the black and white communities of Baltimore?
I so appreciate that question, and appreciate that you are dedicating a few minutes to that question. This is why I came into public service. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and this is certainly what I saw as a 14-year-old in Detroit in terms of just the wide differences in neighborhoods and communities. I will say that the mayor has been very clear of his priority around equity, and to be clear about equity and not what some folks confuse as equality, is that there are neighborhoods that have been suffering, and that suffering is very purposeful and is historic, and it can go back as
and
far
sometimes intentional.
And yeah,
and so, sometimes intentional.
And so when we talk about redlining and what has happened to those communities, there's a very direct connection between that and what is happening with COVID and other sort of matters that are real time and that we're dealing with today. That said, when we talk about equity, we want to make sure that history is understood, and that we are bringing that with us as we think about where programs and services go. And so, and I just met with 311 and the leadership team over at the 311 earlier today. As we think about recreation centers and programs, library services, other quality of life issues, even trash collection and others, that we are absolutely thinking about making sure that this city, no matter where you live or where your neighborhood is, that you're getting the same kind of service and able to enjoy this city in the same way. Now that we have work to do. I'm not going to say that that's going to happen tomorrow, but with the mayor's leadership and with the right executive sort of on the team, we're going to, as a government, be much better at identifying where equity can play and should play a bigger role, and where services need to be more standardized within our city.
Chris, I appreciate that. And I meant Dr. Lawrence Brown, not Dr. Lawrence Johnson, but Dr. Lawrence Brown, who talked about that disparity of these two Baltimores, the white L and the black butterfly. But Chris, we appreciate, I know that our time has been very well spent this evening, but I just want to say I appreciate you for taking time out your busy schedule to talk to us a little bit about your role, the work you plan to do, your top priorities, and looking at the big issue of disparity in our city. You have an amazing opportunity with us here in Baltimore City, but also you have a very, very challenging opportunity as well. But we hope that you can, be able to, and the mayor has put his faith and trust in you, and so we will have to see. But my final question for you, Chris, how do we make sure that we keep you accountable? I hate the word because we talk about it all the time. Yep. But what is one accountability measure that you want us to hold you to to ensure that you are doing your job as the new city administrator?
I will say that we have leaders in place in our government that are talented and responsive. That we are appointing seasoned executives into these roles. That ultimately that is going to be the start of the reform that we need to see in our government while honoring what's already here.
Absolutely. There it is. Mr. Christopher Shorter. Chris, thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely.
We appreciate
Thank you.
you. And, maybe we have another opportunity to circle back to check in with you a little bit later on to get some updates from you, sir.
I hope so. I'd love to.
I appreciate that. Okay. Appreciate that. Chris Shorter checking in as the new Baltimore City Administrator. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come right back, let's talk about COVID-19 and what one state is planning to do, even in the midst of all of this talk of precaution, how one state is responding. And Chris will appreciate that. His home state, part of his home state, is responding to COVID-19 and what their governor has to say. So stay riding with us. It's For the Culture on WEIF. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it.